These are the top 5 boners in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Dual sauce, extra sauce. Hit that subscribe.
Hey everybody, it's Jesse from the Janjo Zone here for a special Halloween-themed countdown of Yu-Gi-Oh! Proportions, and today we're going to be talking about the top 5 boners in Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, the biggest boners in the game. I know it sounds kind of childish, but I couldn't resist talking about the skeletons of Yu-Gi-Oh! I was thinking about doing different kinds of Halloween-themed videos, but ultimately decided upon this one. So in this video, I'm talking about the top 5 skeleton, fossil-y themed cards in the game, and why that they're important to different degrees. So let's enter the draw phase and jump right into it.
Wait, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this.
So at number 5, we have the Reaper of the cards. Now you may remember this from the anime because in the Duel's Kingdom duel between Yamayugi and Bakura, in the very first duel in the anime, when monsters were sent to the graveyard, you saw a actual manifestation of the graveyard who would be there, but the Reaper himself, the Grim Reaper, the Reaper of the cards. So this card does have a special place in some people's hearts because of the anime, but it does have some impact in the very early game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It was one of the very few effect monsters released in the very first set, Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon, with cards like Mass Ninja and Hane. Oh, and Man-Eater Bug, of course. But Reaper of the Cards was really cool because it's like Trap Master. If you summon it and you flip it face up, it can destroy a trap on the field. And that's pretty useful in a game where there wasn't really any good removal for that at that point, apart from remove trap, but even that couldn't hit face down cards. So your only way of face down trap removal was Trap Master or Reaper of the Cards. Now most decks would run Trap Master because that is an easily summonable monster. Reaper of the Cards is not. This is a high level monster you have to tribute to summon, and its attack isn't very high. It definitely has one of the weirder stats in the game, matching a lot of Banakhe's weird monsters or Panic's weird monsters with weird attack and defense. Reaper's defense is what, 1930, something like that? But its attack is very weak. It's not even 1400, and that's pretty pitiful for a tribute monster. If your only advantage is getting a trap removal, if you're really worried about traps, then you might want to go this direction. Or if you want to go for a soul control, more on the control side deck, that's another way you can do it. Sacrifice your opponent's monsters to summon your own Reaper face down, then you can get rid of another card on the field potentially. So you have a lot of advantage with that. Plus, again, it has high defense, so it's, if your opponent summons a Lodgin, it's not going to be able to beat over it. So it definitely has utility. It's not the best tribute monster in 2002, but it definitely has some use in the game, and between that and its anime origins, I have to throw it on the list at number 5. So number 4 is actually a tie. It's tied between the two mammoths of the game, and I'm being very literal here. We're talking about Mammoth Graveyard and the Great Mammoth of Goldfine. These are two Mammoth cards. One is just a normal vanilla monster, very weak, one in Yugi's deck, and the other one was in Bone's deck in Battle City, which is a fusion monster, but it's not of the fusion materials you would expect them to be of. It's not of Mammoth Graveyard and some other gold monster. No, it's Snake Hair and Dragon Zombie. That doesn't make any sense. But hey, they're both mammoths, and I had to include them on there because Mammoth Graveyard, while he's a very crappy card, all things considered, he had a lot of use in the anime. With Mammoth Graveyard, Polymerization, and I believe it was Spell Shattering Arrow, or whatever Yugi called it in the anime, when he fused those two cards together, he was able to rot the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, allowing Yugi to ultimately defeat Kaiba in their final duel in Duel's Kingdom. Which is a huge accomplishment for Mammoth Graveyard. A lot of utility in that regard that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has managed to use. Ones that we haven't seen in the TCG yet. I'm hoping maybe we'll see some Mammoth Graveyard support, like we've seen some other support for weirder cards. You know, things like Catapult Turtle. We saw an updated version of that. Celtic Guardian kind of has his own archetype. I'm hoping we can see more from Yugi's cards like Beaver Warrior or like Mammoth Graveyard. Some rotting effects I think would be really cool. Have like a field spell, have a fusion monster. You know, like there's a lot of things you can do with this because there already is a fossil archetype. You know, that Crocodile, wasn't Crocodile Dundee, that guy from GX, whatever his name was, used, and that actually was released not too long ago. But I think they can do a lot with Mammoth Graveyard in terms of a rotting skeleton, and I think he has a lot of use that is really unique. Even if it's not to the actual card game itself, I think it's definitely worth a spot on this list. Now for Great Mammoth Gold Fine, why he's on this list is because he is a golden boner. Moving on. So number 3 is a card that you should definitely recognize, and that's Summoned Skull. Yeah, Summoned Skull was the big boss monster of the 2002 era, and he's still considered a good card, maybe not to like meta standards, but in terms of card design, he's a 1 tribute, 2500 attack. That is very strong. I think they do exist a 2600 attack 6-star monster nowadays, but for the longest time, Summoned Skull, you know, that's a formidable power. Sure, he doesn't have an effect like a Janjo, which he also has 2400 attack, so it's a little bit weaker. But Summoned Skull definitely held his mark for a good chunk of time in the old school era of Yu-Gi-Oh! Not only was he a recognizable monster from the anime, being used against Weevil and being used to fuse into the Black Skull Dragon, he also has his own archetype, which was released a year ago, somewhere in that region, and a lot of the cards are absolutely gorgeous. I love the Summoned Skull archetype because you got fusions, you got synchros, you got Xyz, you got everything you possibly want, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful. I've always loved Summoned Skull's design because he's a weird bone exoskeleton fiend art. You know, he is an arch fiend, but he definitely looks unique to himself. Apart from, you know, Skull Archfiend of Lightning, which is essentially like the same monster, kinda, but with an effect. Something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure the relationship between them two, if they actually are the same monsters or not. But if you look at all the other Archfiends, Summoned Skull definitely looks unique among them, and he's such a recognizable card. And actually, from what I'm aware of, he was supposed to be Yugi's big monster at the very early point in the manga, but eventually was changed to Dark Magician. But Summoned Skull is absolutely incredible. You can use him in a Soul Control deck. You can just have him in kind of any deck. When he hits the field and you don't have anything to deal with him right away, he is a huge threat in the 2002 Yu-Gi-Oh! Way more so than Reaper of the Cards. You know, I'm hoping that one day he will become more meta. He does have a lot of cool support and a lot of cards you can use with him that definitely has potential, and I'm hoping that we can see more because Summoned Skull is great and definitely deserves to be number 3 on this list. So number 2 is a card I talked about a little bit in a video last week, and that was King of the Skull Servants. We just got announced that there's going to be new Skull Servant support, and it's all going towards the benefit of the archetype's boss monster, King of the Skull Servants. The King of the Skull Servants is really cool because normally he's a very weak monster like the Skull Servant cards, but his whole shtick is that when you have other monsters in the graveyard that have the name Skull Servant, for each one you have in there, Skull Servant King of will gain 1000 attack for each one. So if you have at least 3 in the graveyard, that's 3000 attack. That's very scary because you can keep dumping cards, and with the new one, that's just another one. So there's already Skull Servants, White Mare, White Prince, Lady in White. He can be a beefy boner, that's for sure. And it's really the biggest archetype around skull-related things. I know there's other similar ones I've talked about, like the fossil dinosaurs or the summon skull archetype, but Skull Servants seems to be the main one that sticks around, and one that seems the most fun out of all of them, because even the recent fossil cards have made way more into Adamancipator decks than their own decks or some sort of other rock-based deck. Skull Servants is its own thing. It wants to be its own thing, and it's a very simple deck, but King of Skull Servants is such a cool card in that regard because it takes these really crappy monsters and makes use of them, and that is a big accomplishment for the King of Skull Servants to do. The fact that it is a very decent card for what it does and for what it did for its archetype, I think is very important and 100% worth number 2 spot. So before I get to number 1, let's recap them. We got Reaper of the Cards, we got Mammoth Graveyard / Great Mammoth of Goldfine, we got Summon Skull, and we got the King of the Skull Servants. Now before I get to number 1, let me know what your favorite boner in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. You know where. So number 1 is Fossil Dyna Pachycephalo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. So this is a very great floodgate card. It's kind of like Dragon, where it can destroy all special summon monsters. It has to be flipped face up first for this to happen. It's not a flip effect, but it's just a flip face up. And its other effects that while it remains on the field, neither player can special summon monsters, and that is a very powerful effect, especially in Yu-Gi-Oh! Nowadays when special summoning is such a big thing to do. Yeah, it's a normal summonable Vanity's Ruler or Vanity's Fiend. It's a very powerful effect that can stop special summoning outright. Now again, the problem it has, which that the Vanity cards don't have, is that it is very weak. But you do get the utility of being able to destroy all special summoned monsters on the field, assuming that they can be destroyed by card effect. This is a very great card that, again, it's very splashable. If it ever becomes that point in the meta when it becomes relevant again, it will become relevant. Unlike other cards like, you know, King of Skull Servants is only good in that deck. Cards like Reaper of the Cards will never come back unless there's some really weird archetype around that gets invented. But Fossil Dyna you can throw in pretty much any deck you can. It's a great card to block out a whole mechanic, which is always a strong effect. I mean, look at Janjo or Imperial Order or Necro Valley. Any blanketing effect that stops one of the game mechanics is just so strong. We haven't seen a Fossil Dyna in quite a while, but I really do think it's only a matter of time before we see this boner come back and come back in a good way. I don't know how or when, but I definitely think that there will be a time and place when Fossil Dyna will show its white colors once again and prove why it is the #1 boner in Yu-Gi-Oh! So let me know what you thought about this list. Do you think it was just kind of fun? I thought it was fun. I enjoyed doing it. You want to see more countdowns? What kind of countdowns would you want to see? Definitely let me know. You know where. Comments on my various social media. And if you want me to definitely talk about something you want, check out my Patreon, because I do have a tier, the highest tier of my Patreon, that once a month I will do any discussion you want. So consider that. Also consider checking out my merch. I have a lot of cool new stuff coming on. I have a Duel Sauce shirt already released if you want to wear Duel Sauce around. And yeah, until then, have a wonderful day.